All right, awesome. Well, Matthew, you said it's a beautiful day in North Carolina right now, and you are watching the leaves change, right?
It's amazing here. I mean, for people that have been to North Carolina, the leaves are like this thing that happens for like about a week and a half. So if you don't enjoy it, you're going straight into cold weather after that. So I'm spending every second I can out on the balcony enjoying it. There's nothing like it.
Oh my gosh. Well, and so in Texas, you have about a 2-hour window for getting the leaves. But we don't end up nearly as cold as you do in North Carolina, for sure.
I tell you what, it's taken some getting used to. I mean, I lived in Austin for 4 years, so I understood that, and I was like, I can deal with that. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and Texas is great because it gets to the same sort of temperature as Melbourne, but we don't have that crazy wind like we do back in Melbourne. So I thought, blessed. Here, the first year I got here, it snowed, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Oh, wait. So wait. I thought you just moved there recently. You moved there last year then?
We're talking maybe 9 months, 10 months ago now. So yeah, just after the last small business festival. As you know, I run a pretty large festival in Austin. So I hung out for that period of time. And then after the festival, I came up here.
Nice. Okay. So, and you got promptly greeted with snow. So
yeah, it wasn't pleasant. So I'm happy to be enjoying leaves at the moment, but from what I've heard, it snows once every couple of years, so I'm hoping that it doesn't this year.
Fingers crossed for you. That hopefully you don't get.
You have to deal with 2 hurricanes. I mean, that's enough for this year, I think.
Right. Yeah, let's not even go into that. So, moving back to our conversation here. You're known as the rapid growth guy. How did you get that nickname?
Well, because one of the things that I specialize in, I mean, a lot of people will talk about building businesses on solid foundations, and a lot of people will focus on getting, focused on their functional skill and getting better at their functional skill. But what I realized was people don't spend the time that they need to working on their business in a way that's going to allow them to obtain rapid growth. And, I grew up watching people develop a life savings and then spend it on their dream business, only watch them close it a couple of years later. And, families that get divorced, I mean, it's tough. And it's all because they thought, if I just make great food, or if I'm just a great printer, or if I'm just a great business coach, people will buy off me, build it and they will come. And that's just not true, especially in this global economy we now live on, where people can just buy things from China. So what my focus is helping people understand that if they focus on just 3 things outside the scope of their functional skill, they'll be able to beat their competition in hands down and stop having to compete on price. And that's really about creating a differentiated message that separates you from all your competition, so that you're not trying to hustle to get people to understand why exactly what you offer is better than the other competitors. Second, if you niche, you're only competing in a market of one. And then if you create a sales system at that point, especially with 1 and 2 under control, the sales process, which is a process which we'll talk about, becomes so much easier.
So basically, when you focus on the things that actually help your business grow, it's possible to grow.
Well, the thing that I find, and I did a presentation at the National Freelance Conference in Austin. Gosh, I would have just landed into the country about 4 years ago, and it was a 45-minute session, and we went through this 5-step worksheet. And at the end of it, I said, put up your hand if you now have a strong, unified message will excite your prospects to want to know more about you, and you've identified a niche of people that are finally going to pay you what you're worth. And like 97% of the room put their hands up. And then I said, and this is the sad part, I said, keep your hands up if this is more time than you spent on your marketing in your business since you started your business. 85% of the room kept their hands up. I mean, it was a 45-minute session. Now, I've had people come back 6 months later, and I mean, I had a florist of all things, who doubled her business in 60 days after that session. If a florist can do it, you can too. But here's the key. You've got to actually focus on these things that they don't teach in school. They don't teach when you're doing your functional learning or application when you're working for somebody else to learn your great skill. But you've got to focus on it. And it's really not that hard. That's why I talk about rapid growth the lazy way in my presentation, because so many people are saying, if I focus on just hustling, I mean, everybody loves this whole concept around hustle. Yeah, okay, I get it. But hustle implies that you've got to work ridiculously hard to outrun everybody else. Now, I was never the fastest runner at school. I was a long distance runner, but I wasn't the fastest runner. But for me, I mean, I'd love to start, a kilometer, 2 kilometers, or 2 miles, if you like, up the road, because everybody else can fight over there. I'm on this path by myself. And that's the key. If you don't want to hustle for the rest of your life, which, you may be in your 20s or your 30s now, but you're going to get tired. Yeah. Get your message right, understand your niche, create that market of one, and then everything just becomes so much simpler.
I agree. And it's funny because I was actually talking with someone last week. He was like, I'm so tired of this hustle porn that everyone is so excited about. Everyone, like, everything is, like, we post a picture at 12 o'clock at night. Oh my gosh, working so late, life of an entrepreneur. And like, it's a bragging right. And even I've done it too. And I'm reaching the point where I'm like, hold on, this is not fun. I don't want to do this forever. Like, wait a second. No, I don't know. Like, there has to be a better way than working till midnight every night.
It depends on what stage of your life you're in. But let me be honest, none of it is a good idea, right? I mean, if you're in your 20s, you should be out and enjoying your friends and life. If you've just had a child, spend time with your child. And if you're getting into the later years, go and travel and enjoy yourself. Hustle only makes sense for a short period of time. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, most people, if they come into the conference, they probably read my bio, and I've been responsible for 5 multi-million-dollar success stories before I turned 30. I came to the United States. I launched my brand. I exploded here. And, since I launched my book, I did some hustle then. We sold 18,000 copies already since I launched it in January. So I'm not saying don't hustle, but make it a finite amount of time with an overall strategy to get yourself back out of the hustle. If you don't do that, I mean, what you're really just saying is that you're going to tirelessly work away for the rest of your life. Now, I see this: work 80 hours a week for yourself so you don't have to work 40 hours a week for someone else. But the goal's got to be to make more money working 30 hours a week eventually, and then being able to retire, not constantly having to do that into your 80s. And if you don't have a strategy right, you'll find you'll generally earn less money than if you were going to go work for someone else. And that's horrific, given how much risk you're taking and given how much work you're actually putting in.
Oh my gosh, right? That, Keith, and you think about so many people who do just end up working harder and harder. And I always joke, I'm like, you're actually your worst boss. Like, you are harder on yourself than any boss is ever going to be. And so when you go to work for yourself and end up making less money and working more hours, it's not a win there. And I like what you said, you have to have a strategy in place to get out of that, because there's nothing wrong with a little hustle and grind. I try and do, like, if we're going to do a hustle, like do 30 days of grind and then relax, right? We're in the midst of operation reclaim my evenings type of thing, where I'm like, I'm not working in the evenings anymore. I'm going to get back to having a life outside of just the business. And if you don't have that strategy, that plan, you never get back to that point.
Absolutely. And it's always just that next corner, or I'm just going to push a little bit more, or, oh, I just lost this big customer. Well, you lost that big customer because they stopped seeing value in what you did, or because you weren't hustling to get more clients, or you didn't have the right strategy to get more clients to chase you. I mean, it's funny. I used to have direct sales teams, telemarketers, retail stores. Now, from some different strategies, people chase me. I mean, everybody reaches out to me and says, hey, can you speak at this event, or can you coach about this, or can you coach me, or, whatever. And it's funny how simple it is to turn. But the problem is, and I'm going to use an archery term, that I was speaking at a castle the other day in, I'm trying to remember where it was, in Utah, of all places. And I was speaking in this castle that was built for this Danish princess. And this lady inside, by the way, we're talking about stories at the conference as well. Notice what I'm doing. I'm telling this well-articulated story that has value right through it. So people see value in the story, but they'll also hear the detail, right? So one of the girls that when I was speaking, she said, one of the things that came to mind is I'm always teaching people around business. It's very similar to, business is very similar to archery. A lot of times, if you imagine you're just throwing the arrow, but if you get a bow, sometimes you've got to pull back just a little bit to fly forward. But here's the key thing: in this world of hustle, we're training ourselves that we have to continually work hard. We've always got to be hustling and moving forward. And sometimes the biggest thing you can do for your business, and not for a long period of time, but just pull back and think about the strategy, where you're going, and then fly forward. And if you don't do that, then a lot of times 10 years later, you're like, why did I even get into this? You've traded in your passions for what's practical for so long, you don't even remember what you got into the business for. And that's a horrible thing, especially for those people that got into a business because they wanted to create a great 6-figure, 7-figure income doing what they love, to lose the love for what they do. Because what are they doing it for then?
Right. Right. Because all you've done is, I mean, you've just worn yourself out. That was really, I have to say, so we are talking about storytelling at the Grow Retreat, which is when I actually get to meet you in person, which is exciting. And you talk about neurocoupling that happens with stories, which I'm pretty sure just happened when you told that story, because I got all excited listening to you talk. I'm like, exactly, yes. So what is this neurocoupling thing? Why does it matter? How does it happen with story? Like, what is this thing?
Well, this is just one of the things that I feel give you unfair advantage in any sale, right? I always say, I don't care if you've seen 10 salespeople before me. If I tell a story, there's a whole lot of reasons, which I'm not going to get into because that's what the presentation's about. But the specific neurocoupling element is really interesting. What happened is when I tell that story, people would have leaned in to listen. People would have all of a sudden, even if they didn't really care about all of the logical fact and the detail I was saying before, when I started to tell that story, people were like, wow, a castle in Utah and Danish prince. And all of a sudden, it's like I'm telling the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? Your brain goes, story time, and you start to listen. But since the dawn of time, people waltz into town and they developed relationships by telling the story of their journey. And because of that, our brain has started to do this thing called neurocoupling, which is when somebody starts to tell a story, the teller and the listeners of the story's brains start to synchronize, and it creates artificial rapport. Now, of course, there are lots of things you could do to create real rapport, but gosh, it gives you an edge. And especially, my book's called The Introvert's Edge, which, and it's done really, really well. But the biggest thing that I wrote the book for was to help introverts realize that once they get past the fact that they're scared of selling and understand it's a strategy, then they actually have an advantage. And the biggest advantage is understanding that there are things you can do to stimulate a positive sales experience, and you can plan that before you go in. And the biggest factor of that is knowing that you're going to tell a story, and that story is going to develop the thing that most introverts really struggle with, developing rapport on their own.
So I do want to talk about this because I've been telling everyone about how many months was it after you moved to Austin that you got called the most well-connected man in Austin?
Well, I was invited to events that were listed as the top 100 most connected people in the city within about 7 months. But by the end of the year, I had already won government proclamations of thanks for my work with small business. I was invited to be on some of the biggest US podcasts. I think I'd been published on Entrepreneur. I'd been on TV a number of times, been on radio. And yeah, I'd been in the country for less than, about 12 months. So, the biggest thing for me, I've got this article that I wrote. It's called Networking Does Work, You're Doing It Wrong. And it's because everyone goes to this networking events and they're like, oh, we've all been through it, right? What is it you do? Oh, that's nice. Awkward pause. Wait for them to finish, and then they feel obligated, and then you do the same, and they say, oh, I worked with someone like that before. Didn't really work with me. It didn't really work for me. Oh, that's awkward. Now we look for an excuse to go to the bar or go to the bathroom, right? The problem is most people do networking wrong, but that's because instead they're all trying to sell, which of course you have to go there to do it, but you can do it just by telling a few stories and embedding what we're going to talk about during the conference, which is a unified message, something that intrigues and inspires people to want to know more, but doesn't commoditize yourself, which is what we all do, right? Oh, I'm a business coach. I'm a professional speaker. Oh, I'm a ghostwriter. Well, that's nice. I don't need that. Or, oh, there's 1,000 of you. How much do you cost? Oh dear. Now we're stuck in this horrible situation.
Right. And so you are doing 2 presentations at the conference. You're talking about rapid growth the lazy way on day 1, and then you're doing creating your story selling playbook on day 2. What is the difference between the 2 of those? What is a brief overview of what you're going to cover in both of those?
So rapid growth the lazy way is all about, well, if you like, unfreezing you to the fact or helping you understand that everything you've been doing in your business is awesome, right? And most people are not failing in their business or struggling in their business or stuck hustling in a averagely or successful business because they're not great at their functional skill. It's because they forget the importance or have never even heard or are unconsciously avoiding the three major things that are going to make them really successful in their business. So what we do is we break down what those are and help people understand exactly what they need to do to create rapid growth in their business by focusing on three primary milestones. And we go into real depth on the first two in day one so people can understand, okay, so if I just do these 5 things, all of a sudden, people are going to be excited about what I do. I won't feel commoditized. Every time I hand somebody a proposal, which in day 2, I'll tell you, don't hand a prepaid proposal to someone. But anytime they do it, they're not going to just flick to the back page and go, oh, there's the price. That's more expensive than this person. I'm not going to work with you. So we learn how to do that and how to create a market of one. And what I'm going to use is a couple of stories to really help you understand why that really works. And then in day 2, I'm going to show you what I did in day 1 to help you learn faster and help you really buy into those ideas by talking to you about what I call the story playbook, which any sales team, I mean, I've worked with this with big companies like Oracle, with non-for-profits like Make-A-Wish Foundation, right through to small businesses, and drastically improve their sales and their closure rates and their sales cycle length just by helping them understand that firstly, stories is something that's generally not part of most people's sales. And even if it is, it's something like customer wanted this, so I gave it to them. Right. Okay, that's not a story. So we're not a story that I'm really going to identify with. It didn't have the castle. It didn't have the Danish princess. It didn't have the person in the back of the room that talked about the bow and arrow. It didn't have a lot of the detail that made it a well-articulated story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach everybody how to create value-articulated stories in their in their sales presentations and even in media interviews that get people to go, oh my gosh, this person, I have to work with them. And you'll be surprised. Most businesses, I mean, I only have 3, and I've seen big corporations, billion-dollar companies that only need 3 stories. You need 3 stories, and they're really easy to put together. And I'm going to show you how to do that in day 2.
What I love about this event is like we've got all these people kind of like showcasing and I don't want to say teaser because it's real content on day 1, but then like the breakdown on day 2, like, okay, how did I do this? How did I get to where, got you guys to where we are? Like that, I'm so excited. I'm like, my team and I have all been arguing back and forth over whose workshops we're going to sit through and all that stuff because we're so excited to hear you guys talk.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, you guys are the growth trade. I'm the rapid growth guy. It seemed like a marriage made in heaven. And, while I do a lot of great stuff with corporations, my passion is helping the small to medium business owners, the people that, I mean, there's something heroic about a person that goes into business for themselves. And that's the group of people that I'm on this earth to help. Right. So I love what you guys are doing. And that's why I'm excited to come down to San Antonio and really show people how they can stop working so hard and just make some great money.
I'm super excited. Well, Matthew, I know you have a ton on your plate, so thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come hang out and chat. And this was great. I'm going to re-listen to this broadcast probably a couple times because I think you dropped some awesome nuggets.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much for having me, and I'll see you in January.
Sounds like a plan. See you then. Bye, guys.